All right, Shalom, Shalom, Akim, Ashar Shabbat, Happy Sabbath. All right, as we come together on this holy Shabbat, let's give all praise and honor to Yahawah, the name of his son Yahawashi, starting off with his prayer. Abanawa, Shabbat Shamayam, Kwadash, Haya, Shamka, Yahawah, Malakwatka, Taba'a, Ratazaka, Haya, Esha, Ra'a, Rataza, Kawa, Haya, Bashamayam, Natan Lanawa, Lacham, Ka Yawam, Wasalak Lanawa, Kabawab Wad Nawa, Kasalak Hanawa, Khawab Wat Yanawa, Wala'a, Tabaya Anawa, Banasayawan, Abal, Hawashanawa, Mayan, Rai, Kaya, Laka, Hamalakwath, Waha'ala, Wahatha Pa'arath, Lai Walamyam, Shalawam, Shalawam. Right, so today's lesson will be dealing with the Holy Shabbat, the Holy Sabbath. Right, we're talking about the Sabbath a little bit. Right, just kind of going through a little bit of history about it, so on and so forth. Right, so we'll learn a little bit through the Spirit about the Sabbath. Salakia, 1 second. Salakia, ready to start. I didn't even have my Bible ready. Right, but all praises. All right, so again, like I said, we're going to be talking about the Holy Sabbath today. So let's go to Sirach, the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 15. Start at verse 18. That's what we're going to go at. Right, because I know with Christianity, I know with a lot of studies out there that the Sabbath day is, for one, is on Sunday in Christianity. And even if you're like a 7-day Adventist, that's that they keep the Sabbath on what we consider Saturday. Some Jehovah Witnesses, they go out and do the majority of their work on Saturdays, right? On the Sabbath day, which is the correct Sabbath day, right? The 7th day of the week. Not to be associated with the god Saturn, where they get the word Saturday, but the Sabbath, which is the 7th day of the week. But we'll get into that a little bit more down the line. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 15 and verse 18. For the wisdom of the Lord is great, and he is mighty in power, and beholdeth all things. And his eyes upon them that fear him, and he knoweth every work of man. He hath commanded no man to do wickedly, neither have he given any man license to sin. Right, so no matter what, at the end of the day, the Most High is giving nobody license or permission, because when you have license to do something, that's like having permission. Right, the Most High is giving no man or woman license to sin. No Israelite man or woman, no matter what tribe, no matter what clan, what camp, he's given no man or woman license to sin. Right, and that's something we got to understand. So that now that we're talking about the Sabbath, right, we know that we have to keep the Sabbath. We know that that's a commandment of the Most High, that we have to keep the Sabbath. Right, it's not optional. When it comes to Christianity and dealing with Jesus, the Sabbath is optional, right? Because you can just lean on Jesus to cover you on the back end, right? You got to go out and go shopping on that Sabbath day. Jesus understands your heart, right? That's what Christianity teaches us. But is that according to truth, right? So let's go on over here to same book. Let's jump on over to Ecclesiasticus chapter 6. in verse 37. Right? Because like I said, we know that the Most High's eyes upon every work of man, and he's given no man license to sin. Right? And we know, according to 1 John 3 and 4, that sin is the transgression of the law, breaking the commandments. Right? So Ecclesiasticus chapter 6, verse 37. And it reads, let thy mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord, and meditate continually in his commandments. He shall establish thine heart and give thee wisdom at thine own desire. Right? So we want to let our mind be upon the ordinances of the Lord, the ordinances of the Most High, right? And it says to meditate continually in his commandments, right? So let's look at that word ordinance. Through the Bible dictionary definition, ordinance or an ordinance is a rule established by authority, a permanent rule of action, right? A permanent rule of action. So we know that according to the scriptures, the ordinances of the Lord, right? Those are established by the Most High God, which is the authority. And an ordinance such as the Sabbath day, right? That's a permanent rule of action. And we're going to see that through the scriptures, that that's a permanent rule of action, right? So again, we want to, our relationship with the Most High is based on trust, belief, right? And really getting our minds geared to serving the Most High in righteousness, right? Seeking that kingdom of righteousness. We want to seek first the kingdom of the Most High and its righteousness. We want to seek the righteousness. Then all those things will be added, right? So let's go to Romans 15 and 4, right? Romans 15 and 4, some basics, right? Get our minds conditioned, right? As the Most High conditioned our minds in the wilderness, right? Let's get a conditioning, right? It's the book of Romans, chapter 15 and verse 4. And it reads, for whatsoever things were written aforetime were written for our learning, that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope, right? So when it comes down to talking about the Sabbath day, search the scriptures, right? All these things that are written aforetime, all right? It's all for our learning, for our growth, for the betterment of our spirit, right? For the bettering of the relationships between one another, right? We need to, the word is our map back to the kingdom, not only to the kingdom, but the map back to establishing that perfect relationship with our God, right? He chose us, right? And he's given us his word in this latter time. Those who are actually seeking the Most High, he's given us his word to give us a path back to righteousness, to be nigh unto him, right? So that's something that we always got to remember, that the things that are written in this Bible, contained in his word, it's written for our learning, right? We want to reestablish the tribe. You want to reestablish the nation. You want to build your house, right? And I'm not talking about, a structure. I'm talking about a house, man, woman, and children, right? These things are written aforetime, right? So let's go to Psalms chapter 19 and verse 7. Psalm 19:7. Psalm 19:7. Right? Because even Yahawashi told us in the New Testament, right? We have to be converted. Have to be his children and be converted. Right? What is he talking about? It's the book of Psalms, chapter 19 and verse 7. And it reads, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. Right? So we know that the laws of the Most High, that's perfect. That's what converts our soul. So in the New Testament, when Christ said, told one of the children to come over and sit on his lap, and said you had to be converted, you have to be as one of these children and be converted. That's what he was talking about. You have to come back to the laws of the Most High, because that's what converts your soul, right? Testimony is sure, making wise the simple, right? So the Most High is not gonna give us something complicated. right? He's going to give us something that's simple. This is what I tell you to do. This is what not to do. Do what I tell you to do. That's simple. Simple instructions, right? Simple instructions. Baruch. Let's go to Baruch, chapter 3, verse 36. Right? It's the book of Baruch, chapter 3 and verse 36. He has found out all the way of knowledge and hath given it unto Jacob, his servant, and to Israel, his beloved. Right? So we know that the Most High, again, he chose us. He chose us. We didn't choose the Most High. The Most High, in all of his perfection and all his wisdom, did what? Gave it to Jacob, his beloved, his firstborn, his beloved. Right? And as the Most High has given us the way of knowledge, right, we should choose that. And why should we choose that? Let's go to Psalms chapter 18 and verse 30, right? Let's go to Psalms chapter 18 and verse 30, because we see that the law of the Lord is perfect, right? And then out of all of that, he gave the ways of knowledge to Jacob, right? It's the book of Psalms chapter 18 and verse 30, and it reads, as for Yahawah, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord is tried. He is a buckler to all those that trust in him, right? So as the Most High has given us his word, right? He's given us the law, right? He's given us the law because this way is perfect. Every aspect of the law is perfect because his way is perfect, right? So that's what we as his children should be applying all of his laws. Right, so that's what we as a nation, if we want to, be reestablished as a nation, even as a tribe, right? We have to choose the ways of the Most High and all of His ordinances. We have to let our mind be upon those ordinances because it's a perfect way. It's the perfect way for us to live, right? Let's go to Sirach, back to Ecclesiastes, chapter 17. Go to Ecclesiastes, chapter 17. All right, so it's the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 17, verse 17. Starting at verse 17. For in the division of the nations of the people of the whole earth, he set a ruler over every people, but Israel is the Lord's portion. Right. So again, just more proof that the Most High chose Israel. Right. He's given every people their own type of ruler over them, but Israel is the Lord's portion. The Most High is the ruler over the nation of Israel. Right. Also, and he gave us that diligence, right? He brought us through all of he brought us out of Egypt, right? Brought us from among the heathen to give us diligence, right? And that diligence is just the rehearsing of the righteous acts, the keeping of the commandments, the ordinances. That's the diligence, right? Let's get 2nd Ezra chapter 3. I'm gonna come back to Sirach, come back to Ecclesiastes. We're gonna hold that real quick. Let's get the 2nd Ezra chapter 3 and verse 19, right? Because Israel is the Lord's portion. And it reads, and thy glory went through 4 gates of fire and of earthquake and of wind and of cold, that thou mightest give the law unto the seed of Jacob and diligence unto the generation of Israel. Right. So just as, like I said, just as the Most High has set a ruler over every people, the Most High himself is the ruler over Israel. Right. He brought us through those elements to give us the law and diligence unto the generations. So this is something that we got to continuously teach our children, grandchildren, making sure that they instill it, because this is the way of life, the perfect way of life, right? The perfect way of life. right? Let's get Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 26. Get Leviticus 20 and 26. Leviticus 20 and verse 26. All right, so the book of Leviticus chapter 20 and verse 26. And it reads, and ye shall be holy unto me, for I the Lord am holy, and have severed you from other people, that ye should be mine. So again, Israel is the Lord's portion, right? We can't forget that. Can't forget that. And as we study and as we search the word, we find that evident through the precepts, right? Those precepts just showed us. The Most High chose us, and we are the Lord's portion, right? So let's go back to Ecclesiasticus. Let's go back to Ecclesiasticus. Starting verse, I'm gonna read verse 17 again. Keep going. Verse 17, for in the division of the nations of the people, of the whole earth, he set a ruler over every people, but Israel is the Lord's portion, whom being his firstborn, he nourisheth with discipline, and giving him the light of his love does not forsake him, right? So Israel being his firstborn, he nourisheth with discipline, right? Giving him that law, giving him diligence, because in diligence, you have to have discipline to do something diligently. You have to have discipline, right? And giving him the light of his love does not forsake him. And we know that that light goes back to what? The commandments. We know that the commandment, the law is light, right? Also, he gave us, in that law, it's a whole heritage. It's a whole lifestyle, right? Let's jump over to chapter 33 and verse 7 in Ecclesiasticus. Jump over to 33. The book of Ecclesiasticus, and we'll go back to chapter 17. But it's the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 33, verse 7. And it reads, why does one day excel another, when all the light of every day in the year is of the sun? Right? So, why is one day more important than another, right? When the cycle is continuous, right? Every day the sun rises, every day the sun sets, right? And there is no difference in the day, right? The sun doesn't come halfway up, right? It comes all the way up, same cycle every day, right? But let's look at it. Verse 8, by the knowledge of the Lord, right? By the knowledge of the Most High, they were distinguished, and he altered seasons and feasts, right? So by the knowledge of the Most High, he is the one who decides what days mean what, right? Even though the sun may rise on these days in the same cycle, the knowledge of the Most High, or the law of the Most High, there's a difference, right? And these feasts are, and some of these days, right, that are high days, or these important days that excel another, right? They're in certain seasons, right? And then we have certain feasts that go in certain seasons, right? Verse 9, some of them had he made high days and hallowed them, and some of them hath he made ordinary days, right? So, and that's also how we look at the Sabbath, because the Sabbath is a high day. Most of our feast days, all of our feast days, have Sabbaths at the beginning, or the day of is a Sabbath. It's a day of rest, or Day of Atonement. That's a Sabbath, right? Where we fast, right? But it's not the weekly Sabbath. It's not the high Sabbath, right? But it is a Sabbath, right? Or like with Feast of Dedication, that first day is a Sabbath, because it's to be kept as the Feast of Tabernacles. So that first day is a Sabbath, right? Where you don't do any work, but you can cook, right? Or especially during tabernacles, that's a day of where there's no servile work, right? You're not doing any work for pay, but you're setting up tents and feasting and cooking for a feast. So there's a difference in the days, but by the knowledge of the Most High, they were distinguished. They were distinguished, right? So we know that we have the what? The Holy Sabbath. It's a high day, right? And it's different from other Sabbaths. So in good fashion, just like Israel is such a stiff-necked people, hard-headed, very hard-headed. And we get full of ourselves because we don't keep the diligence and or the discipline. Right? Let's go to Ezekiel. Go to Ezekiel chapter 20. Ezekiel chapter 20, we're gonna start at verse 10. All right. And it reads, wherefore I caused them to go forth out of the land of Egypt and brought them into the wilderness, right? Just like we seen earlier, right, in Ezra, right? He brought us through those elements, right, which are representing coming out of the land of Egypt, right, and brought us into the wilderness. Verse 11, and I gave them my statutes and showed them my judgments, which if a man do, he shall even live in them, right? So the Most High gave us what? He gave us the statutes, showed the judgments, right? What you should do to live in them, right? So let's go to Exodus. We're gonna come back to Ezekiel, but let's go to Exodus chapter 20. Let's look at the law and the statute with the law. And look at some of the things that are surrounding the law. Right, let's go to Exodus chapter 20 and verse 8. Right, and it reads, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Right, it didn't say thou shalt keep the Sabbath day, but it says to remember the Sabbath day. Right, so that's already letting you know that's something that's going to be, the Most High's tapping into your mind, because he's telling you to remember the Sabbath day. He didn't say, remember thou shalt not kill, or remember not to kill, but that's commanded to not kill, right? But he says to remember the Sabbath day. So really hone in on that. Remember the Sabbath day, right? And this is what he brought us out of Egypt, right? Under our oppressors, because they had us working, we were working day in and day out, right? Building whatever they want. Same as today, nothing new under the sun, right? We're in a captivity where we're working nonstop, right? If it wasn't for the Most High telling us, hey, remember the Sabbath day, and we believe that, we'd be out working 7 days a week, trying to get that overtime. They make it sound good too, right? You work that weekend and you work through the week, you get that overtime, right? And this is the same things they were doing, back then, right? Nothing is new under the sun, right? So Exodus 28, it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all that in them is, and rested the 7th day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Right? Right, just like we just read, right? Some days he made high days and hallowed them. Right. So the 7th day is hallowed. It's the Sabbath, right? Nobody can do any work, right? Wives in the house, they're not cooking and washing clothes, right? They're not doing none of the sort, right? Let's look at Exodus chapter 35 and verse 2, right? These, those things like, no one is to do work. That's a statute of the law, right? Book of Exodus chapter 35 and verse 2. 6 days shall work be done, but on the seventh there shall be unto you a holy day, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whosoever do a work therein shall be put to death. Ye shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day, right? So we don't kindle any fire, right? We don't kindle the fire. We don't cook, but we also kindling that fire, right? That's also the Most High's anger, right? Because it's the day of the Most High, right? It's the Sabbath day of the Lord. That's why I said, whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death, right? And this is something that we were doing back then, right? And today, can you still be put to death on the Sabbath? Yes, you can. Because these laws are still in effect. These laws are in effect. Just because people don't keep them doesn't mean that they lose effect, right? We see, unfortunately, that incident that happened last year in Buffalo, where that young man shot up that store, kill all those folks, right, on the Sabbath. Now, if these people were congregating, keeping the Sabbath holy, right, they wouldn't been at the store buying and selling, right, because it's a Sabbath day of rest. No one works, so the town is shut down, right? Stores are closed on the Sabbath, right? But that's something that the Most High established, right? You shouldn't do any work on the Sabbath, and whosoever do so shall be put to death, right? So let's go back to Ezekiel. Let's go back to Ezekiel. And I'm gonna pick it up at verse 12, because in verse 11 it said he gave us these statutes that a man, if he do, he shall live in them, right? So we have to live in these statutes, even to this day, right? We shouldn't be out on the Sabbath working or in the yard mowing grass, out doing whatever we want, right? Because it's the Sabbath day of the Lord, right? So let's pick it up at verse 12 in Ezekiel. And it reads, moreover, also I gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between me and them, that they may know that I am the Lord that sanctify them. But the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness. They walk not in my statutes, and they despise my judgments, which if a man do, he shall live in them. In my Sabbath they greatly polluted. Then I said, I would pour out my fury upon them in the wilderness to consume them. Right. And that's how hard-headed, Israel was in the wilderness 40 years. 40 years. The Most High made Israel walk in the wilderness for 40 years until that generation of hard-headed men and women died off. Right. Let's get an example of one of those times. Right. Let's get Numbers chapter 15 and verse 32. We're gonna come back to Ezekiel still. Right. We got to get this. Numbers. Let's look at Numbers. Numbers chapter 15 and verse 32. This is the book of Numbers, chapter 15 and verse 32. And it reads, and while the children of Israel were in the wilderness, they found a man that gathered sticks upon the Sabbath. And they that found him gathering sticks brought him to Aaron, Moses and Aaron, and unto the congregation. And they put him in ward, because it was not declared what should be done to him. Right. So we see this man out on the Sabbath gathering sticks. Right. And, it is a day of rest unto the Lord, but this guy's out here gathering sticks. Right. So we look at it, well, why is it so serious? It's serious because this man's mind was not on keeping the commandments of the Most High. He wanted to still do whatever he was going to do when he was gathering them sticks. Right. Because a lot of the time we see on the Sabbath, people are out here still gathering what? money. Even to this day, they're out gathering money, right? And this man here was gathering sticks for whatever reason he chose, but it was not to be obedient to the Most High, right? So they called him, they locked him up, but they put him in ward, which is a form of lockup, right? Verse 35, it reads, and the Lord said unto Moses, that man shall surely be put to death, and all the congregation shall stone him with stones without the camp. And all the congregation brought him without the camp and stoned him with stones till he died. And the Lord commanded Moses, as the Lord commanded Moses. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel and bid them that they make them fringes in the borders of their garment throughout their generations, and that they put upon the fringe of borders of a ribbon of blue. Right? So we even see through this situation, this is where we get the ordinance for fringes, because this brother was out on the Sabbath day collecting sticks. So now we an ordinance we have is to wear fringes, right? And this is the reason, verse 39, and it shall be unto you for a fringe that you may look upon it and remember all the commandments of the Lord and do them, and that you seek not after your own heart, your own eyes, and your own eyes, which you use to go a whoring, right? So we're supposed to look at these fringes when we get into these situations, or any situation where you may be tempted to do the wrong thing, or tempted to sin. Let's say that, tempted to sin, right? When you're tempted to break the commandments of the Most High, you're supposed to see these fringes and understand that I got to keep the commandments. At the end of the day, I got to keep the commandment. I got to keep the commandment, right? Because it says what? And that you seek not after your own heart and after your own eyes, which we use to go a whoring. Meaning that, man, our eyes and our minds, if we don't have something to balance that, not to balance that, to restrain and bridle that, right? Then we're gonna go whoring after some type of idol god. We'll fall off into witchcraft and sorcery and astrology, as to not the knowing of, but the believing therein, right? And we go into manifestation and chakras and things of that nature. All of these things that, if they're not in the scriptures, then we have to question those things. Is it breaking the commandments of the Most High, right? The Sabbath day is a very important ordinance. The Most High said he just made it a sign between us and him, right? And we see that this man was out gathering sticks on the Sabbath day, meaning he wasn't thinking about the commandments of the Most High, right? So now we have an ordinance to where we have to wear fringes, right? As and as carnal as it is, it's as carnal as we can see it, because it's something physical, something tangible. That's how weak our minds are. That's how weak our flesh can get, right? We need something physical to look at to remind us that the Most High said to do this, right? But verse 40, that you may remember and to do all my commandments and to be holy unto your God, right? To be holy to Yahawah, right? So we wear these fringes, and wearing these fringes, is it going to stop us from breaking the commandments? No, but wearing them and meditating in the scriptures, as this is written right here for our learning, we do it to remember to do what? Keep the commandments, that we may remember all the commandments, to be diligent in it, right? Because we make mistakes even while wearing fringes, but we have to repent, right? Seek the Most High's forgiveness. This thing is a cycle. It's conditioning, right? Do we condition ourselves and then take off the fringes? No, it's part of our lifestyle. It's part of our heritage, right? Just as the Sabbath is a part of our heritage. It's not something we get to pick up and put down, right? It's not something we pick up and put down. All right, let's go back to Ezekiel. We'll pick it up at verse 14. And it reads, but I wrought for my name's sake that it should not be polluted before the heathen in whose sight I brought them out. So the Most High, he's like, man, I should just go ahead and wipe them all out right now. But because his name is attached to us, he was not going to do that, right? He wasn't going to do that inside of the heathen, because the heathen would have been, what? Mock him, like they always do. Look at those people. They got brought out of land just to die in the wilderness, right? And that would have not pleased the Most High, right? So the Most High, he just did what? He made them walk 40 years in the wilderness till that generation died off. So that next generation who was gonna keep those ordinances, right? So that generation that was gonna keep those ordinances grew up. All right, verse 15. Yet also I lifted up my hand unto them in the wilderness, that I would not bring them into the land which I had given them, flowing with milk and honey, which is the glory of all lands, because they despised my judgments and walked not in my statutes, but polluted my Sabbaths, for their heart went after their idols. Right? So you know what I mean? Like that's why the Most High had to continuously say that, man, y'all not getting it. Y'all not getting in that land. That generation, y'all not getting in that land. Y'all are just way too hard hit. Right? Let's get an example of that. Let's go back. Let's take a little travel back. Right? Let's go to Exodus. Shalom. Let's go to Exodus chapter 16. We're gonna go to Exodus chapter 16, right? And I'm not gonna read this whole chapter. I'm gonna just pick spots, but it's a good read, right? Because you get to see how once our people were brought out of, captivity under the Egyptians, how we were that generation was just extremely hard-headed. Man, that generation was just, man, trash, right? You know what I'm saying? As far as them believing in the Most High, even after seeing all of these great wonders, right? So I'm gonna start it. This is Exodus chapter 16. I'm gonna start at verse 4. And it reads, Then said the Lord unto Moses, Behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them whether or not they will walk in my law or no. And it shall come to pass that on the 6th day they shall prepare that which they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. Right? So the Most High is even showing that, hey, go out there, get a certain amount every day, but on that 6th day, make sure you get double. Make sure you get double. Get twice as much. Right? And Moses and Aaron said unto the children of Israel, at even, then ye shall know that the Lord hath brought you out from the land of Egypt. And in the morning, then ye shall see the glory of the Lord, for he heareth your murmurings against the Lord. Salaki. And what are we that you murmur against us? And Moses said, this shall be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full, for that the Lord heareth your murmurings, which you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. Right? So, and that's just the stiff-neckedness of our people. Right? They in their mind, the Most High knew what they were saying, right? Like, he's reading everybody's mind, right? He's hearing he's hearing the complaints, right? But the Most High is gonna do what? He's gonna give them something just even off the complaints, right? And Moses spake unto Aaron, say unto the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he hath heard your murmurings. Right? Let's jump down a little bit. I'm gonna go down to verse 16. All right. No, 15. And it reads, and when the children of Israel saw it, they said one to another, it is manna, for they was not what it was. And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, and gathered some more, some less. And when they did meet with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing, and he that gathered little had no lack. And they gathered every man according to his eating. And Moses said, let no man leave of it till the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses, but some left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. Right. So every morning they had to get up, go out there and gather this manna. Right. And he told them not to let it sit, gather it, don't let it sit overnight. And of course they didn't listen. Right. And we see that that generation just did not listen. Right. Verse 22, and it came to pass that on the sixth day that they gathered twice as much bread, 2 almost for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. And he said unto them, this is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which you will bake today, and see it that you will see it, and that which remaineth over lay up for you to be kept until the morning. Right. So, you got your bread, you got this bread, right? Because they seen a guy gathering twice as much, and they running over there to tell, hey, look, he getting too much, And they said, well, no, this is the thing that's commanded, because tomorrow is the Sabbath. Day of rest, right? You can't even go out there, and you're not even supposed to go out there and gather, right? So go ahead and bake that bread, get it all baked up, right? And keep it for tomorrow, right? Verse 24, and they laid it up unto the morning as Moses bade, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein, right? Because they did as Moses told them to do, right? They did as they were told to do, so they didn't waste none of that bread, right? And Moses said, eat that today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today ye shall not find it in the field. 6 days ye shall gather it, but on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. Right? So the Moses is telling them, like, look, go ahead and make sure you get the right amount. Get on that 6th day, make sure you get your double. Because on the Sabbath, there ain't gonna be none out there in the field, right? And you would think that, okay, all right, it's nothing gonna be out there. Right, but we see in this next verse, and it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the Sabbath day for to gather, and they found none. And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse ye to keep my commandments and my laws? Right, it's like Moses just told these people that there's not going to be any manna out there on the grounds for you to pick up on the Sabbath, because it is a day of rest. And still there were some going out there to gather manna. Right. Verse 29, see that the Lord hath given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he given you on the 6th day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. So the people rested on the 7th day. Right now, so does that mean that we can't, leave our houses on the Sabbath? No, that does not mean that. That means that, that no man is to go out there and leave out his house to go gather on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to go out there to go gather no bread or go out there to do anything, because it's a rest day. It's a commanded rest day, right? You know what I mean? And in a world that we live in, we need a day of rest. There's a lot that comes at us all the time. So we need that day of rest. It's commanded, right? So nothing should stop us from resting on that day. All right, let's go back to Ezekiel. Let's go back to Ezekiel chapter 20, and we're going to pick it up at verse 17. And it reads, nevertheless, my eyes spared them from destroying them, neither did I make an end of them in the wilderness. But I said unto their children in the wilderness, walk ye not in the statutes of your fathers, neither observe their judgments, nor defile yourselves with their idols. I am the Lord your God. Walk in my statutes and keep my judgments and do them. And hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that ye may know that I am the Lord your God. Right. And this is what the word of the Lord that came to Ezekiel in that time, right? But if we let's go to Exodus chapter 31. We'll go to Exodus 31, right? Back in the wilderness, right? Because that's what the word of the Lord that came to Ezekiel, and he's reminding Israel that this was something that was already said, right? This is the book of Exodus, chapter 31, verse 16. And it reads, Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. Perpetual, meaning ongoing. This is something that's not going to stop, right? Verse 17, it is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever, right? Not till the New Testament came, but forever, right? Not till Christianity came, but forever. This is something the children of Israel will be doing forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he was rested and refreshed. Right? Let's get that account. Let's go to Genesis. Right. So just like a father would, he would want his children to. He rested and refreshed. Not his children, you rest and refresh. You done worked all week. You know, men, you done went out there to make sure you providing for your home. Rest. Sisters, you done been, taking care of the household and doing your wifely duties. Rest, right? And get refreshed, both mentally, physically, spiritually, right? That's the book of Genesis, chapter 2 and verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, Yahawah ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And Yahawah blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work, which Yahawah created and made. Right? So just like it said in Exodus, right? He was rested and refreshed, right? After doing all that work, putting this what we consider this life together for us, right? He rested on that seventh day. But we have to understand that the Sabbath is that important. It's a sign between us and the Most High. So we must keep the Sabbath day. Right, that's why the Sabbath day is the top of all top of all Sabbaths. It is, right? Let's get that. Let's look at Leviticus. Let's go to Leviticus 23. Let's go to Leviticus 23. I'm gonna start at verse 1. All right. It's the book of Leviticus, chapter 23 and verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, or holy gatherings. Even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, a holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is a Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. Right? So we see that the first feast day and holy convocation is the Holy Sabbath, right? Now it is a feast day that we don't cook, right? We don't cook on the Sabbath, right? But it is a feast day in which we do gather, right? We can always prepare cold dishes and come together, right? So on and so forth, right? We come together on the Sabbath, right? And this is how we build. This is how we honor the Most High together as a nation, right? We're supposed to come together as much as we can, right? We're not supposed to forsake that assembly, right? Which we'll see, right? We want to make sure that we understand the rules of the Sabbath, right? And one is it's a holy convocation. It is a holy gathering, right? And we should be finding, time in the future to set aside time on the Sabbath to gather when we can, especially as a tribe, right? We should look to, plan to gather. However the Lord see fits for us to do it, right? But the Sabbath day is a holy convocation and it is a feast day, right? Since it's a holy convocation, right? Let's go to Jeremiah 17. Go to Jeremiah 17 and 21, because it is a holy gathering. It's a holy gathering, right? It's the book of Jeremiah, chapter 17 and verse 21. And it reads, Thus saith the Lord, take heed to yourselves and bear no burden on the Sabbath day, nor bring it in by the gates of Jerusalem. Right? So that's one thing too, as the Sabbath day comes in, right? We're to bear no burdens on the Sabbath day. right? Where all the issues of the week, right? We let go on the Sabbath day, right? Another way that they would express burdens were carrying things, right? Carrying their products, right? Things that they were selling and stuff like that, right? You're not to bear any burdens on the Sabbath day, right? You weren't supposed to when you entered in, if you was coming from outside of Jerusalem, right? You couldn't bring those wares and things with you, your victuals and all that. You weren't supposed to bring that with you, right? You're not supposed to come to the holy place with the intent to sell anything, right? Um, and then also spiritually again, right? You don't bring any burdens in your household on the Sabbath, right? Um, verse 22, neither carry forth a burden out of your house on the Sabbath day, neither do ye any work, but hallow ye the Sabbath day as I commanded your fathers, right? So, taking things out, right, of the house on the Sabbath, right? If you go into a holy gathering, right, let's say there was some static at the house, right, or argument, things of that nature, issues. You don't take those things out the house to go to this holy convocation, this holy gathering, right? Because this holy gathering isn't about your problems. It's about the Most High, right? It's about honoring the Most High and being rest and refreshed on the Sabbath, right? Being around people in good spirit who are uplifting the Most High, right? To uplift your spirit, right? This is one of the main reasons why we have these feast days and have these holy gatherings. It's to help keep one another built up, right? And what better time to gather than a day that we're commanded to rest? Everybody should be chilling, right? In the scriptures, right? Not so much talking about the week, but just praising the Most High for making it through the week. Because some of these weeks get hard, right? These days get hard. But the Sabbath day is that day of rest, right? That holy convocation where you don't bring anything in your house, right? On the Sabbath, you don't take anything out, right? But you go and gather with your brethren, you gather with your nation, right? To build, to honor Yahawah, why Yahawashi, to honor this day of rest that he made all these things that are to our use, right? And we rest and honor the Most High, right? Let's get Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10 and verse 23. I'll start at 23. Right, and it reads, let us hold fast the profession of our faith without wavering, for he is faithful that promised. And let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together as the manner of some is, but exhorting one another, and so much more as you see the day approaching. Right. So we know that, as these days get more evil, right? We should be gathering together, not forsaking that assembling, right? Because we need to provoke one another to good works, right? To that love, right? To that charity, right? To the Holy Spirit, right? Because we're only as strong as our weakest link. But this is our profession, right? Keeping these commandments, observing the Sabbath. This is a part of our profession, right? And we shouldn't do it without wavering. We should do it without wavering, right? Whether or not we should keep the Sabbath or not, whether or not it's important. No, it's the Most High. The Most High gave us this law. All of it's important, right? And we should gather together and be refreshed in the spirit, because not everybody out there in the world is looking to serve Yahawah. Neither keep a Sabbath day. But we, those children, right? We want to be those obedient children, consider those obedient children. We're going to keep that Sabbath. We're going to gather together, right? Because we're already a nation that's not desired. But we're going to gather together and exhort one another, as we know that those times are coming where everything's going to change in an instant, and we're going to be put back in our rightful rulership. But until then, we have to endure. We have to lift one another up, build one another up, right? And the Sabbath day of rest, what better opportunity to do it than then, right? Let's get another one we're familiar with. Let's get Isaiah 58. We should be real familiar with that one. because the Sabbath day is that important, right? The Father rested. We should rest too, right? It's the book of Isaiah, chapter 58 and verse 13. And it reads, if thou turn away thy foot from the Sabbath, from doing thy pleasure on my holy day, and call the Sabbath a delight, the holy of the Lord, honorable, and shall honor him, not doing our own pleasure, nor finding our own ways, or not doing our own ways, nor finding our own pleasure, nor speaking our own words. Then thou shalt delight thyself in the Lord, and I will cause thee to ride upon the high places of the earth, and feed thee with the heritage of Jacob thy father, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Right? So, the Sabbath should be a day of joy, serving the Most High, right? Giving up whatever we were doing for ourselves to give to the Most High, right? To turn and focus all of our attention on Him together, because we want to ride on those high places of the earth, right? We want the Most High to take us to new heights and new levels, and show us a kingdom of righteousness and what it is to be a part of that and to really be inside His love, right? So, to keep the Sabbath, right, to delight in it, make it honorable, because a lot of people they don't care, right? They hear, oh, I got time and a half on Saturday, man, I'm about to go get this money, right? They've made money their God, right? So they're going to go serve that God, right? Because that's all they want is money, 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 right? Or, whatever the case may be, somebody might choose to do on the Sabbath day, other than honoring the Most High, right? They've made that thing their God, right? They've made that thing their idol to serve, right? But that's why the Most High commanded us to not follow the ways of the heathen, right? Enjoy the Sabbath day and enjoy a day of rest. And of course, that looks thin when, people got bills and payments to make. And if I just work this one extra day, I can just get this money to cover that bill. Well, the Most High gave us Sunday to Friday. He gave us Sunday to Friday, right? So, we have to make sure that, we understand that the Most High gave us the Sabbath. We didn't give the Sabbath to the Most High, right? It's for our rest. And if we're concerned about, finances, we have to go to the Most High, right? Because it's nothing for the Most High to put us in a position, even financially, to where we're not struggling. But that's predicated if we can keep the commandments of the Most High and listen to the Most High, right? Let's go to Ezekiel chapter 22 and verse 26. Because even with, the Most High giving us a holy day such as the Sabbath, that day of rest, right? And telling us, those ordinances, right? Don't bring any problems in, don't take any problems out. Just focus on me, I'll fix it, right? Come to me, I'll fix it, right? Let me refresh you spiritually, physically, right? Don't, speak our own words, right? You know what I mean? Be in the word of the Most High, because that's where the healing is. That's where the hope, the wisdom, all those good things are the Most High, right? Things not to do, things to avoid, right? But in good fashion, we still have to remember that Israel is a stiff-necked people and a very corrupted people, right? Let's get Ezekiel chapter 22 and 26, and it reads, her priests have violated my law and have profaned my holy things. They have put no difference between the holy and profane, neither have they showed difference between the unclean and the clean. And they have hid their eyes from my Sabbaths, and I am profaned among them. Right? And we see all of these spiritual leaders out here, all these churches has got pastors, right? And they're out there, teaching the word of God or preaching the word of God, but they won't honor the Sabbath day. All right, and they'll say, well, Sunday is the Sabbath day. Well, again, the law of the Lord is perfect, right? And it makes wise the symbol. If any man or woman looks at a calendar, it's clear to see that the first day of the week is what they call Sunday. So wait a minute. How can Sunday be the first day, but then be the seventh day? There's no way, right? That's just trickery, right? But that's something that that the heathen has done to manipulate us again, right? Into breaking the holy Sabbath according to the ordinance of the scriptures. That's why they start work weeks on Monday and pay you usually between Thursday and Friday on average. They pay you between Thursday and Friday. So you can spend all your money on when? Saturday. That's when most people spend a lot of their money. Between Friday night and Saturday night. Right? But our spiritual leaders are out here that, if you're not, in the truth and serving Yahawah in truth, then they're out there, careless on Saturdays and just breaking commandments. And then, they're relying on Christianity's Jesus to, cover them on the back end. But they're out there sinning willfully. All right. Let's get Baruch. I'm gonna get Baruch chapter 1. Baruch chapter 1. Because of that profanation of the Sabbaths and just profaning the Most High, what we would do, he did poured out his fury, and we would do what? Sent to captivity. Right? This is the book of Baruch, chapter 1, and verse 9. And it reads, after that, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, carried away Jeconiah and the princes and the captives and the mighty men and the people of the land from Jerusalem and brought them unto Babylon. And they said, behold, we have sent you money to buy you burnt offerings and sin offerings and incense and prepare you manna and offer upon the altar of the Lord our God. And pray for the life of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and for the life of Belshazzar, his son, that their days may be upon the earth as the days of heaven. And the Lord will give us strength and enlighten our eyes, and we shall live under the shadow of King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, and under the shadow of Belshazzar, his son, and we shall serve them many days and find favor in their sight. Pray for us also unto the Lord our God, for we have sinned against the Lord our God, and unto this day the fury of our Lord and his wrath is not turned from us. And ye shall read this book which we have sent unto you to make confession in the house of the Lord upon the feast and solemn days. Right. So even though we were sent into captivity under Nebuchadnezzar at that time, right, we were still and it's telling us this, it said what? Pray for the life of Nebuchadnezzar and his son, right? Because they, when you read in the book of Jeremiah, it says to pray for the peace of the city, right? So, all we wanted to do was just, even though we knew we were going to serve them many days, right? We knew we had to accept that punishment, right? And serve out our days, as the Most High said, right? But also to make confession of these sins that we've committed, right? Upon our feast and solemn days, upon these holy days that we have, we're supposed to be doing what? Asking the Most High for forgiveness, right? Admitting that we, confessing that we've sinned against the Most High, right? That we have not kept his statutes and his commandments, and that our forefathers went away from him, but we're going to turn back and make prayer and supplication before him. And not only that, that's why our feast days have sacrifices attached to them. Now, under Moses, it was a certain type of sacrifice, but under Yahawashi, it's a spiritual sacrifice, right? It's more of a spiritual sacrifice, us actually applying the laws and changing our spirit between feast days, right? We don't bring the goats and the lambs for sin offering and all those things anymore, right? We're working on bringing pure spirit, pure intentions, pure love, provoking one another to that love, right? That charity. That's the type of sacrifices that we're bringing to these feasts and on these solemn days now, right? We're communicating with our mouths to the Most High. right? So even in captivity, right, they were supposed to keep solemn days and feast days. And even though we're serving in captivity under Esau right now, we're supposed to do what? Keep our feast days and our solemn days, keep our Sabbath, and pray for the peace that we can, that the Most High move whatever. If we obtain a job, we will work Monday through Friday, all praises, right? And we can get that Sabbath off, but it's not like that for everybody, right? It's not like that for everybody, and some places won't even hire people if they won't work Saturday, right? So then again, that puts our people in a bind. Well, I got to feed these kids, or not work. So these things come into play. But again, we have to continuously go to the Most High. That's why even now, like even within the tribe, the Most High is allowing us to build our institutions. So when people need jobs, Lord's will, we get to a point where we can provide those things, especially for those who looking to serve Yahawah, right? Who want to keep the Sabbath day, right? But also still need to feed their family, still have to have, funds to feed their family, right? But that's our hope, that's our prayer, right? We see that even under Nebuchadnezzar, we went into captivity, but then we came out of captivity, right? After we served, we came out of, let's go to Nehemiah. We came out of captivity and was able to rebuild, right? Let's go to Nehemiah chapter 13. I'm going to go to Nehemiah 13, and I'm going to start at verse 14. All right. And it reads, remember me, O my God, concerning this, and wipe not out my good deeds that I have done for the house of my God and for the offices thereof. In those days I saw I in Judah some treading wine presses on the Sabbath, and bringing in sheaves and lading asses, and also wine, grapes, and figs, and all manner of burdens, which they brought into Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And I testified against them in the day wherein they sold victuals. Right. So, even after the Most High has allowed Nehemiah and those choice Israelites to come back and rebuild Jerusalem, he did what? He see brothers out there breaking the Sabbath. Right. You see brothers out there breaking the Sabbath, they're just doing what they want to do, right? They're getting their horses ready. They out there, with the wine, the grape, the figs, they're doing what they want to do. Again, right? Verse 16, there dwelt men of Tyre also therein, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem, right? So even people of another nation came in and was selling us stuff. Look at what they were selling: fish and wares, all manner of wares. The same they do today, right? They move right in our neighborhoods, right? You got your seafood market right up the street. You got the gas station right there that's selling whatever, right? You got any and every type of stores, right? Selling whatever, selling all manner of wares. They still do these things to this day, right? They've come on our land right now, and that's what they're doing right now, right? Verse 17, then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said unto them, what evil thing is this that ye do and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath day, right? So, Nehemiah had to go in there, and he's talking to the more respectable men, right? That's allowing these things to go on, right? Now that's the similitude of, Lord's will. Let's say we have patents of land, and we can build communities, and we allow, the heathen to come in and set up and start selling stuff to us, to our people, and we see our people in these stores, right? And the Most High has allowed us to build these areas up. It's the same thing. If we let these people come in and do the same thing, the Most High is going to do what? He's going to destroy that area. He's going to make sure that area, since we can't maintain it because we want to break the Sabbath, what? He's going to take it away from us again. right? And now as we build, that's what we should be doing, right? That's exactly what we should be doing, right? We should be, keeping the Sabbath in our area. And when we can, because we have businesses and things of that nature, we just shut down on the Sabbath, right? We might can't affect everybody as a whole just yet, but us doing our part, right? On the Sabbath, because the Most High can take things away from us as well, right? Verse 19, and it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gate should be shut and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set I at the gates that there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kind of ware lodged without Jerusalem once or twice. Then I testified against them and said, why lodge ye about the wall? If you do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth, they came no more on the Sabbath. Right. So, we see that Nehemiah had to go tell him, man, look, if you keep coming around here, we're gonna do something to you. Right? I'm gonna do something to you. You keep coming around here, trying to get these people, trying to get my people to break the Sabbath, I'm gonna do something to you. Right? And it would be glorious if we could do that to this day, even though we will have a way to do it. We will find a way to do it. Right. So we see that, we have to fight for the Most High as well. Right. And that's just by doing our part, right? Just standing up and doing our part, even though in captivity. Right. But we see that we went into captivity because our priests, our leaders were not keeping the Sabbath. They weren't making us keep the Sabbath. Then we allowed to come back and rebuild. Nehemiah does what? You know what I'm saying? He contends with the nobles, telling them, hey, look, man, we got to shut this down on the Sabbath. The Sabbath is very important. The Most High brought evils upon us just by not keeping the Sabbath day. Right. And we would think that we would keep this thing going, right? But then again, just past Feast of Dedication, we learned that we go back in captivity under Esau for the first time, right? And this is what this man on. Let's go to First Maccabees, which we read already. But First Maccabees, we can go to First Maccabees chapter 1 and verse 41. Verse 41. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion and sacrificed unto idols and profaned the Sabbath. For the king sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah that they should follow the strange laws of the land and forbid burnt offerings and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbaths and festival days and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts, that they should also have leave their children uncircumcised and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end that they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And again, the Most High set up an ordinance that's a permanent rule of action. Yet, again, through our hard-headedness and disobedience, right? The Most High has allowed another nation to come in, take us into captivity, then make this suggestion, which a lot of the Israelites consented to, right? Because they wanted them to profane the Sabbath and they should also profane the Sabbaths and festival days, right? So notice there's a difference in the Sabbath and the Sabbaths, right there in verse 43, right? They were supposed to sacrifice the idols and profane the Sabbath. And then in verse 45, they would profane the Sabbaths with an S and festival days, right? Because our feast days, most of the beginning days are Sabbath days of rest. They're not the high Sabbath, but they're all days of rest, right? And this king came up and did this so we would leave our laws and be under that one world order, right? They want us to be under the one world order. And again, nothing new under the sun, right? And we still have Israelites that are still doing that. They're profaning the Sabbath days, the holy days, the festival days. They don't even keep any of the Most High's holy days, the festival days, right? They're into all the Babylonian idols. That's what they do. They serve these idols. They're into these Babylonian idols, right? So even fast forward from there, right? That's when we have the Feast of Dedication coming from, because Mattathias and his lineage, along with other Israelites, stood up against the Greeks, against Esau, and fought back and took the altar back, right? They took the altar back. But again, our people we can't stay consistent. Can't stay consistent for nothing, right? Let's look at, let's go to Matthew chapter 12. Matthew chapter 12. So that's one thing that, we have a problem with is diligence, consistency, right? All right. It's the book of Matthew chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Yahawashi went on the Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were hungry. They were hungry and began to pluck the ears of corn and to eat. But when the Pharisees, spiritual leaders, saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful upon the Sabbath day, right? So the Pharisees has come to him and say, hey, look, man, they out there plucking corn. They ain't supposed to be out there plucking corn. This is a day of rest, right? But if they're the spiritual leaders, which we know that the Pharisees were, they should know the law. Let's look at the law and see if Yahawashi and the disciples were breaking the law. Let's go to Leviticus 19. Let's go to Leviticus 19. Leviticus 19 and verse 9. Right? And it reads, and when ye reap the harvest of your land, you should not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather all the gleanings of thy harvest. Thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and the stranger. I am the Lord your God. Right? So there's a difference between what Yahawashi and the disciples were doing, right? They were doing according to the law. They went through there to just pluck a couple pieces of corn because they were hungry, right? They weren't plucking the corn to harvest it. They were plucking it because they were hungry and eating it because they were hungry, right? Which we were supposed to do in the law anyway. We had fields of corn. We would gather all the corn that we're going to store, but leave some, right? Brotherly love, right? For the poor, right? Whatever we had, we didn't take it all because we shared, right? So what they were doing, they weren't bringing a sickle to the corn to harvest the corn. They were just getting some because they were hungry, right? But verse 3, but he said unto them, have you not read what David did when he was a hunger, and they that were with him, right? And this is why we have to search the scriptures, because we have to take into account the accounts that are being mentioned, right? The account that he's mentioning now, right? When David was hungry and they that were with him. Let me read verse 4. Verse 4 says, how he entered into the house of God and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for him to eat, neither for them which were with him, but only for the priest, right? We have to know when this account happened. This account happened in, let's get it, 1 Samuel. First Samuel chapter 21. And if you read from 21 to verse 6, right? David came in with the priest on the Sabbath and just said, hey, can you feed us? And I think the priest was Abathar, which, only thing he had was the showbread, right? And showbread was prepared on the Sabbath, right? Showbread was prepared on the Sabbath. So, even though the priest gave it to him, he had to make, he did it because he was hungry. If a man is hungry or a woman is hungry, just, you feed them, right? That's the faith and the works put together. That's the faith and the works put together. But it's very important to know those things in the scriptures, because if we don't know those things, we won't know why Yahawashi is even quoting these things to these people, because they being masters of the law, which Pharisees were, or supposed to be, they should have known these things. Because that's why have you not read, right? Because they should know these things. Right? Verse 5. Or have you not read in the law how on the Sabbath days the priests in the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? Well, how is that possible? It's possible because there were sacrifices that still had to be performed. They still had to prepare these sacrifices, even preparing the hot bread, right? They had to cook on the Sabbath, right? They had to slaughter animals on the Sabbath and offer up these sacrifices upon the altar on the Sabbath. But it says are blameless. They're doing what they're told to do. All right, verse 6. But I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple, right? And how is that, right? It says, but I say unto you that in this place is one greater than the temple, right? And that was talking about that physical temple that was standing, right? And what Yahawashi was talking about was what? The spirit, right? Because in the spirit, we know that the Most High dwells within us, right? Let's get that real quick. Let's get Acts real quick. The book of Acts, chapter 7 and verse 48. Because he said one that's greater than the temple is here, right? Chapter 7, Acts chapter 7, verse 48, and it reads, howbeit the Most High dwelleth not in temples made with hands, as saith the prophet, right? So we know that the Most High does not dwell in temples made with hands. That's talking about within us, right? That spirit that's within us, the spirit of Yahawah that's within us, right? Verse 7, but if ye had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. You would not have condemned the guiltless, right? And there's a lot of what Yahawashi is talking about, right? It says, because if they knew what that meant, he would have mercy and not sacrifice. He wouldn't have to sacrifice himself, right? Let's get Hebrews 10. Let's get Hebrews 10 and 26. Go back to Hebrews. Get Hebrews 10 and 26. And it reads, but if we sin willfully after that we receive the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sins. But there's a certain fearful looking of judgment with fiery indignation, which shall devour the adversaries. Right. So, if those Pharisees and spiritual leaders understood that at that time, there would be no need for a sacrifice. Yahawashi had not need to sacrifice himself for the sins of the people. But they didn't know that, right? Because they weren't spiritually right. Right. Verse 8, for the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. And when he was departed thence, he went into the synagogue, and behold, there was a man which had his hand withered. And they asked him, saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath days? That they might accuse him. right? So I mean, again, you know, these Pharisees, they out here and they want to accuse him, just like, you know, the devil. That's what Satan wants to do. He wants to accuse you. He wants to find something that you're doing wrong so he can accuse you to the Most High, right? But yet, his own people, just like our own people do nowadays, they accuse us of being crazy. They accuse us of the things that we're doing is not of the Most High, right? Verse 11, and he said unto them, what man shall there be among you that have one sheep, and if that sheep fall into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not lay hold on it and lift it out? Right. That's simple, right? If you got an animal that, you know, you got animals out the back, the animal slip down there in the ditch, you're not gonna leave the animal in the ditch. You're gonna get the animal out the ditch. You're gonna get the animal out the ditch. That's simple, right? That's not you doing work. That's an animal slid. And, you know, this is how, you know, your livestock is how you make your money and how you feed your family, right? If it falls into the ditch, with, you know, and that, especially if that's, you know, one of your last sheep, right? You're not gonna leave it in there for it to die. You're gonna get it out, right? Verse 12, how much then is a man better than a sheep? Wherefore it is lawful to do well on the Sabbath days. Right? So it's lawful to do well on the Sabbath. Just like there's an account where a child needed to be circumcised on the Sabbath, but it's the Sabbath. You're not supposed to be doing any work. Well, the law says on the eighth day, a man child should be circumcised, right? So the Sabbath day still is in effect, but keeping the laws of the Most High is still important. You don't sacrifice, you don't circumcise on the ninth day or the day before. You circumcise on the eighth day. The Most High has it set up this way for a reason, right? And who else to go outside of that reason for any other cause but to keep the commandment, right? So if a man child was circumcised on the eighth day, that's doing well. That's keeping the law, right? That's keeping the commandment, right? Um, you know, I've heard it before when people, you get sick and you need medicine on the Sabbath, right? You have to go out there and buy that medicine, right? It's lawful to do well. You wouldn't want someone to die just because they didn't have the medicine. That doesn't mean that you're not relying on the Most High, right? But it's lawful to do well on the Sabbath, right? We're supposed to be looking to do the right things all the time, right? To keep those commandments, right? The Sabbath, you know, we offer that, and we offer these sacrifices on the Sabbath, right? Which like I said, are spiritual. Now we offer these, you know, we don't bring, our lambs and things for sin offerings because that what the ordinance was, right? But now we offer these spiritual sacrifices because those sacrifices that we were offering weren't making us better people. We were just, doing things in vain, just doing it to do it because we knew that that's what we had to do. But, there was no change in the spirit, right? Let's go to Hebrews 13, verse 15. Because it's lawful to do well on the Sabbath day, right? This is Hebrews 13 and verse 15. And it reads, by him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of praise to Yahawah continually. That is the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. But to do good and to communicate, forget not. For with such sacrifices, Yahawah is well pleased. Right. So, it's lawful for us to do well on the Sabbath. Even, we pray, we read the word, right? We teach our kids on the Sabbath, right? To be in the word and be this example and to just communicate with the Most High, right? Let's get one more on that. Let's get Ecclesiastes. Let's get Sirach 39 and 35. Ecclesiastes 39:35. Right? And it reads, and therefore praise ye the Lord with the whole heart and mouth, and bless the name of the Lord. Right. So those are the sacrifices we're offering on the Sabbath day to do good, to be lawful. Right. to communicate with one another. That's why we to gather together. You know, even when we do calls together, right? To gather together, to be of one spirit, to be of one mind, because the deception is out here. The heathen is out here trying to get us to break the commandments of the Most High, right? And it be your choice, right? That's why it's mental. Like we read earlier. Let your mind be upon the ordinances of the Most High, right? Let's get Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 8. Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 8, because we see we go into captivity in the Babylon. We come out of captivity, we go back into captivity under the Greeks, right? We halfway come out of captivity. The Messiah comes on the scene. They put him to death, and then what? Now we're completely chased out of the land, right? We've been completely run out of the land, right? So let's get Ecclesiastes chapter 10 and verse 8. And that reads, because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit, the kingdom is translated from one people to another, right? So that's why we're just being passed off like an orphan kid that nobody wants, and being used and abused, and then passed on again because what? Unrighteous dealings, injuries, people put to death unjustly, right? Riches got by deceit, like, you know what I'm saying? Lying to the people to get the money, right? Just like Christianity does today. They lie to people and take their money, right? But, and unrighteous dealings, right? Allowing people to come in the temple where Yahawashi had to flip the table because they're selling on the Sabbath. They're exchanging money on the Sabbath, on a day of rest. But because of those unrighteous dealings, right, the Most High did what? The kingdom got translated from people to people, right? And then by breaking the Sabbath, right, and then teaching people to break the Sabbath, that's working witchcraft. Being rebellious against the Sabbath, or being rebellious, period, is working witchcraft. And we're gonna see that real quick. Let's get 1 Samuel chapter 15. Because when to be rebellious against the Most High's commandments, that's working witchcraft. All right. This is the book of 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 23, and it reads, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as the iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, that he has also rejected thee from being king. Right. And this was an account with Saul, because he chose not to listen to the Most High and be rebellious, just like ourselves, right? If we choose not to listen to the Most High and be rebellious, even if it's the keeping of the Sabbath, right, we're working witchcraft, right? Because you're going to teach somebody else that the Sabbath is of no importance. And when you have that type of influence over other people, that's not a good thing, because you have influence. You can teach them to go away from the Most High, right? And that's something that we don't want to do. Or they get to Christianity and they say, well, we got Jesus this and Jesus that. Well, I just lean on Jesus. Well, let's look at what Yahawashi said in truth, according to the commandments, because Jesus came. We don't have to do that no more. Well, let's see what Yahawashi said according to truth. Right? It's the book of Matthew. Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. The book of Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. It reads, think not that I'm come to destroy the law or the prophets. I've come not to destroy, but to fulfill. Right? For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, not pass, one jot or one tittle, and shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled, right? Until all be fulfilled, right? And all of the ordinances of the heavens are still standing. We still see the sun. We still see the moon transition, right? Those things are a part of the standing elements that are still here, right? And so until those things are gone, we no longer see those things according to the prophecies, right? We should still be keeping the commandments. right? So Christianity has used Jesus as witchcraft to fool the people into thinking that they don't have to keep the commandments anymore. That Jesus is just believe on Jesus and all your sins are covered, when that's not true. According to truth, Yahawashi said he didn't come to destroy the law or the prophets. He didn't come to destroy none of that. He has no power to destroy that. The Most High created that, and it stands forever. But all should be keeping the laws till those things pass, right? All right, let's go to Ecclesiasticus chapter 17, verse 24. And it reads, "But unto them that repent, he has granted them return, and comforted those that failed in patience. Return to the Lord, forsake thy sins, make thy prayer before his face, and offend less." Right? And that's what we want to do. We want to offend less. When we hear the commandments, we want to apply the commandments. Right? The Most High has granted us return if you repent. Right? And that's, repent, return to keeping the Sabbath, all of those things. All of these things. Right? But the Most High, we want to offend the Most High less. Right. So we want to learn the ordinances, learn how to, if we struggle with keeping the Sabbath, let's find out why we struggle with keeping the Sabbath. Right. And then do what? Make the proper adjustments so we offend less. Right. Revelation 22 and 14. Revelation 22 and 14. And it reads, "Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter in through the gates into the city." Right? So to get the kingdom, you have to do the commandments. You're blessed when you do the commandments. You're blessed when you keep the Sabbath. You're blessed. Right? That's a day of rest, day of refreshing. The Most High rested and was refreshed. And we should do in the same manner. Right? And we'll close it out with this, Exodus 28. Right? Because we want to be blessed in the things we do. We want the Most High to bless our tribe, to bless our nation as a whole. Right? Because it's not just about the tribe, right? It's about the nation of Israel. But we do want the Most High to bless us in this tribe to bring forth that sight of righteousness that people can see. They can see the Most High in us, on us, right? But Exodus 28, and it reads, "Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy," right? And with that, we say Shalom. We give all praises and honor to Yahawah in the name of Son Yahawashi, just to get a little bit of understanding of the importance of the Sabbath day, right? And we should be keeping the Sabbath, and we should encourage those around us who believe in Yahawah to do what? Keep the Sabbath, right? And understand that its importance in keeping that ordinance. It's importance in keeping all the ordinances of the Most High, but we have to start meditating on these ordinances. And this is because this is how we're getting our houses in order, right? This is how we're getting ourselves spiritually in order, right? The Sabbath day is that important because we can come together and build one another up, because it's such a heavy load among this perverse nation that continues to just, they're putting out sin all the time, right? And what they're doing is throwing a rock and hiding their hand and letting you be left to your own choices, right? But if you're not living or seeking the Most High, trying to seek after his glory and walk in his light, right? You're gonna fall for those tricks and those stratagems that are set up by Esau. Right? I would say Shalom, Shalom.